Yo, the third largest asset manager in the world with a lazy $7 trillion of assets under management has just made an incredibly bullish Bitcoin prediction that confirms a lot of things that I've been saying, that this cycle could be different. And before we get into all that, let's just play the clip for you guys. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
What? Where does it go? What's your price target for Bitcoin?
So I think in the short term, we're going to see one of two cases. The first case is we're going to have some sideways action between 110 and downwards to 80, and we'll see some chop. The second scenario, and that will come either in the short term or in the medium term, is once we have the Bitcoin Act, which is currently under consideration, passed, where the U.S. government will be buying Bitcoin into its reserves, as well as other countries and other corporates for their treasury assets as well, we could see a 500K Bitcoin or $1 million Bitcoin. Sky is really the limit here.
And why? What would drive it there?
So Bitcoin is inherently a scarce asset. You only have 21 million Bitcoins. And the Bitcoin Act, for example, proposes buying 200,000 Bitcoins a year, which would significantly drive up the price as there's a finite supply.
And what about use cases? I was talking about this with a guest on a previous show on Trading 360, just in terms of, President-elect Trump has talked about, the one rule of Bitcoin is you don't sell your Bitcoin. Yeah. But do you expect more people to actually start using it in terms of an actual currency?
For sure. So I don't think that Bitcoin is inherently the type of currency that you buy a cup of coffee with. There are places where people do that. So for example, El Salvador, which I've written about extensively, they use the Lightning Network for those types of smaller transactions, but you don't necessarily need it for that. That's not the prime use case. The prime use case of Bitcoin is a store of value. So when we think about money, there's usually three characteristics that people ascribe to money, the economists ascribe to money, and that is method of exchange, unit of account, and store of value. So there's thousands of methods of exchange around the world. Every currency around the world is a method of exchange. Unit of account, however, there's only a handful. There's the dollar, there's the euro, there's the yen, and now there's Bitcoin. But when you talk about store of value, none of those things are considered stores of value because of their inflationary properties. So if you're a high net worth individual living in the US, you're not storing your value in a case of cash. You're storing your value in buildings, in businesses, in sports teams, in gold, and now in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is that similar type of property. It's just digital, which makes it that much easier to move, to sell, to trade, to transfer it across borders. So it's basically digital, it's property but improved.
And how much of a portfolio do you think should be allocated to cryptocurrency at this point? And has that changed now that we have a very pro-crypto president coming into office?
Absolutely. I think if you don't have at least 10% of your investment account in Bitcoin or Bitcoin-related assets, you're going to fall.
Let's go. As someone just said in the chat, how can we handle all of this bullish news? Guys, it's getting incredible. It's going to be an incredible 2025. But of course, I'm not here alone. I'm here with fellow content creator Luke Mikic. Love to have you on, bro. So if you guys know Luke, you know that today is going to be maybe overly bullish, but it's Friday, so we'll send the weekend off good. Anyways, there's a few things that I want to hit on, Luke, before I pass you the mic. First one is, I think a lot of us, even in Bitcoin, and actually I've been hearing a lot of skeptics on Bitcoin. We got some pretty big people talking bad about the Bitcoin strategic stockpile in the US, but I think a lot of us, even Bitcoiners, are underestimating the impact that the US would have on stockpiling Bitcoin. Remember, if this Bitcoin Act does get pushed through, they do kind of do and push forward the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Act, they're going to be buying 200,000 Bitcoin a year for at least the next 4 years. And obviously, if it does well, that could continue on into the future. And we've been seeing, and a lot of speculation around the world, that, ever since the US kind of announced this, every other nation in the world is at the very least, thinking about following suit. Now, again, the next thing that I thought was very interesting was her kind of saying that Bitcoin is not a currency. It's just a store of value. Obviously, she's talking about the three properties of money: unit of account, unit of exchange, store of value. Now, I think she might be right in in the short term, this is kind of what Bitcoin's been doing the last couple of years, the last 15 years, kind of bootstrapping itself as just a store of value. So I don't necessarily think that that is a bad narrative to be talking about. But as us Bitcoiners kind of believe, moving forward, we all know, at least us like really hardened Bitcoiners believe that Bitcoin is the superior money in the world. And it does have all of these three various properties of money. And it's just kind of bootstrapping itself in the moment. And that's why it's kind of been acting like a store of value. And there's even skeptics that talk about it not even being a store of value, which I kind of find hilarious considering it's the best performing asset the last 15 years. It's the best thing to be holding. Now, the next thing I think is very interesting is not only that, you know, she's being superly bullish, literally giving 500K to $1 million predictions for 2025, but a significant increase in her, you know, recommendation of 10% allocation. Remember in the beginning of the year, everyone was kind of saying, oh, you know, Larry Fink came out here, created an ETF, like what is the perfect allocation that I should have to Bitcoin? And everyone was kind of saying like 1%, maybe 5%. Well, it's slowly inching up to 10%. And I think when this news first came out, me being stupidly bullish, I'm like, you need to go all in. It needs to be your whole portfolio. Well, now you're seeing that it's slowly inching forward. And remember, there was the report from BlackRock, and I think their allocation preference was somewhere around 20%, 25%. If I remember correctly. So we're getting very bullish out here. And the last thing that I want to mention, guys, it's just that it's no longer just Bitcoiners talking stupidly bullish about Bitcoin. You're starting to see it hitting, you know, Tradfi networks here. And remember what those networks are designed to do is to inform investors, their client base out there. And so the signal is spreading, which is something I've been saying to you guys all year, that now it's not just Bitcoiners being bullish out there. And it's not just Bitcoiners talking to Bitcoiners, but it's Tradfi talking to, you know, Main Street. It's Tradfi talking to, for lack of better terms, the normies out there, trying to educate them. But the point remains the same. I think a lot of people are going to be blindsided by how big of an impact Bitcoin is going to have in 2025. With that being said, I think a lot of people are going to be blindsided with how high Bitcoin can run. I'm starting to get really bullish by the end of this year. 2025 is starting to feel crazy. I know a lot of Bitcoiners have been just saying, oh, it's going to go to 150, maybe 200K. I'm starting to feel like maybe these 500K, $1 million predictions of Bitcoin aren't that ridiculous. And it might be happening a lot quicker than we've ever thought. With that being said, you know, stay humble, stack sats, don't over leverage yourself, because if we learned anything from the last bull market, or rather bear market, it could take a lot longer than we ever thought it could to break 100K, break these milestone marks. So just make sure you're stacking sats, make sure the cash flow is coming in, make sure you're saving in Bitcoin, living below your means. And this is the, you know, the predictable path to succeed in Bitcoin. Anyways, Luke, I think I've ranted enough. What's your thoughts on hearing, you know, this lady on Charles Schwab Network talking about 500 to $1 million predictions? I mean, she's basically taking your job, bro.
She's taking all of our jobs, bro. We have a $9 or $7 trillion asset manager right now talking about the fact that, yeah, not only is Bitcoin going to go to 500,000 or $1 million per coin, but if you don't have a 10% allocation, you are going to get left behind. I mean, how crazy is it that we've come this far? Only 2 years ago, the world was attacking Bitcoin. 2 years ago, Bitcoin was a Ponzi scheme. 2 years ago, FTX was blowing up. China was banning Bitcoin mining because Bitcoin mining was boiling the oceans and Bitcoin wasn't this green asset. 2 years ago, the World Economic Forum and BlackRock were openly attacking Bitcoin, saying it's not ESG friendly. Everybody was talking about, you know, proof of stake and stakeholder capitalism. Everybody was saying proof of work is bad, Bitcoin is bad. And now 2 years later, every single asset manager worth his salt is now openly bull posting about Bitcoin. Like, not only is it Charles Schwab, a $7 trillion asset manager, the third largest asset manager in the entire world, but we have Larry Fink going on CNBC, bull posting about Bitcoin. Michael Saylor got given the mic for like, what, 6 minutes yesterday on CNBC, and he was just waltzing around. Like, they gave him a whole big, grand, big TV for him to show all of his slides and all of his charts on, and they let Michael just control the D floor, so to say. That's what we say in Australia. Michael just got up there and just started absolutely spitting fire. So I think it's incredible how far we've come in only 2 years. Opti, are you kind of sensing that maybe things are a little bit different this cycle? Because I've got the tingles. I really do. Like last cycle, I was very loud and open about the fact that I think there's a 30% probability we could kind of break these cycles of diminishing returns and all of this stuff. And I was big on the whole super cycle train. I said, look, I think there's a 30% chance that we're not going to stop at 100 or 200. We're actually going to go much higher. Now, again, nothing's a certainty. Everything's a probability. That's why I like to assign probabilities to everything. But I've been pretty loud here for at least 6 to 12 months here saying, look, I think this cycle, instead of a 30% chance we see some pretty crazy numbers, I'm more in the 50, 60% chance. It's now my base case that I expect to see a 500,000, 600,000, even $700,000 Bitcoin in the next 12 months. How about you, Opti? How are you feeling about everything happening this cycle?
Well, I mean, I hate being the Bitcoiner because I hate being the cliche Bitcoiner. This time is different, but I think fundamentally we've seen throughout this year that this next cycle will be different. Like it is different. Do we know that the cycles are going to be different? Do we know that cycle theory is going to break this cycle? I think we might be jumping the gun a little bit on that. I'm a little hesitant to say it's super cycle this cycle. Maybe that's 4 years, 6 years from now, but this time is fundamentally different. Remember, in the past we've always talked about the fact that institutional capital is here. Well, now we know for a fact they are here. And next is the nation state FOMO is playing out. And that is the crazy aspect of this game theory. And a lot of the skeptics out there talking about, it was Peter Schiff himself. Like what would he say? He did a tweet yesterday, something on the lines of like, it's super ironic that the only way Bitcoin made it past 100K was because of, state backing and President Trump coming out here talking and being pro Bitcoin, when in reality, a lot of us Bitcoiners are like, this was inevitable. It's going to happen anyways. But yes, having some favorable tailwinds does help us out. Like we get super bullish when really big names start talking about Bitcoin because it spreads the Bitcoin signal outside of our echo chamber. So I don't have prediction odds here for you, Luke. I don't know what the predictions are, but my gut is telling me that 250. It just, I am feeling that the pent up demand from 2021, I think we're going to see an incredible blow off top next year. And that's the only metrics I really can give you guys, is just like a gut instinct here. But Luke, you said something interesting, and I always like to talk about this because Nico's very big on diminishing returns. I'm kind of thinking on the opposite side that, hey, maybe the diminishing returns isn't going to play out like it's played out in the past. Obviously, we only have about 3 data points for this. So, dive in a little more on the diminishing returns. What's your thoughts on diminishing returns? Do you think we're going to kind of play out the same cycle, theory that we've had in the past? Is it a law of big numbers that as Bitcoin gets bigger, the price can't rise as much? Like, what's your thinking on the terms of diminishing?
So I've got a lot of thinking on diminishing returns, but I think before we get to that, we actually have some breaking news happening right now, Opti. We have pumped by more than $1,000 since we've been on this live stream, and the chat is absolutely blowing up about it. Not only is the chat blowing up about my crazy hair, the chat is blowing up about $100,000 Bitcoin. It's incredible to see a lot of the regulars in the chat, but we are at $100,000 Bitcoin. So
Okay.
Vamos.
Well, it's kind of funny. I was having a conversation with Big Sean last night, and I tweeted about it as well. What I saw with the 100K, touching Bitcoin and then going back to 90K, it really reminded me, and I think I might have said this on the show as well, it really reminded me of 2017 when Bitcoin finally hit 10K and then it went down to 9K literally the day after. And so, just doing some quick math here, if kind of the same, framework like playbook is playing out, in 2017, Bitcoin would run, a day, no, sorry, 1K like a day, and that was its fluctuations. And now we're kind of seeing something similar, but on like a 10K level a day. And it kind of reminds me of what American HODL has been saying in the past, that it took forever for Bitcoin to break $100, and then it took forever for Bitcoin to break $1,000, and of course 10K and 100K. And as we go farther down the movement and the price increase of Bitcoin, it starts to fluctuate between, $100,000, $10,000 a day, and we forget and we don't even notice it because it's just so normal for us. So like $1,000 a day fluctuations, like what is this, return for ants? Like is that really what we're here for? But with that being said, it's like, are we going to be seeing, $1,000, $10,000 a day increases? And if that is the case, like how high can this run? Like literally, how high can we run on this, Luke?
I don't know, but if you can share your screen, I want to show the people the big green dildo of a Bitcoin candle that's actually started while we've been on a live stream. This is the 30-minute chart. Bitcoin's pumped by, we're about to touch $101,000 per coin, which is crazy. I reckon there's some psychopaths in the chat right now smash buying Bitcoin. Absolutely smash buying Bitcoin. But I want to go back to that question you asked me earlier, diminishing returns. Because I really don't think it's likely that this whole idea of diminishing returns, it plays out forever. So a lot of people are saying each cycle we're going to see smaller returns. And that argument at face value, it sounds logical, right? They say, oh, but as Bitcoin becomes a bigger market cap each 4-year cycle, we need an exponentially larger amount of capital to see a 50x or a 20x. And that's true, right? In that 2013 cycle, we saw like 100x for Bitcoin, okay? And then in the 2017 cycle, we saw something smaller. It was more like a 20x. And then in the 2021 cycle, we saw something smaller. It was more like a 4 or 5x. So everybody's saying we've gone from 100x to 20x to 5x. That means next cycle, we're going to see something smaller than a 5x. We're going to see like a 3x. Maybe Bitcoin tops out at $150,000 per coin. And again, I just think it's really dangerous to extrapolate out the first 15 years of Bitcoin data into the future and say this is our model for the future, because this is previously what the data showed us, okay? I think Bitcoin's fundamentally in a different era right now. And I think when you really look at the total addressable market cap for Bitcoin, and you actually think about, okay, what could Bitcoin be worth? What should Bitcoin be worth if the world wakes up to what Bitcoin is? Then when you start looking at that target in the future, you start to realize diminishing returns makes 0 sense. I don't think it makes any sense, okay? Bitcoin's got the biggest total addressable market cap in the world, right? So it's $900 trillion. Now again, if you understand Bitcoin, you know that Bitcoin is the superior store of value asset. I mean, there's $300 trillion in real estate, hundreds of trillions of dollars in the debt market, over $100 trillion of fiat currency that's literally melting away at 15% per year on average for the globe. Okay, why would you hold a fiat currency losing 15% per year when Bitcoin's appreciating by 100% per year? That's a compounded annual growth rate. Okay, again, this is just maths, but Bitcoin has a $900 trillion TAM. Even if you're ridiculously bearish, even if you wrongly believe the narrative that Bitcoin is just digital gold and it can, let's say it can capture 50 or $100 trillion market cap. So $100 trillion, it sounds like a lot, but it's only like what, 10% of the globe's store of value assets. Okay, well, $100 trillion Bitcoin is like, it's a very pricey Bitcoin. It's a $5 million per coin Bitcoin. Now, if you say Bitcoin has a very conservative $5 million TAM, and we're not even talking about multiplier effects right now, when you actually take into the equation that if you want, or if the world wants to put $100 trillion into Bitcoin, you actually have to factor in the multiplier effect. So if you've got $100 trillion of hypothetical demand for Bitcoin, you actually need to use what is right now a 6x multiplier effect. So that means you've actually potentially got, $600 trillion of hypothetical TAM coming onto Bitcoin's market cap. But maybe let's stay a little bit conservative today. But when you start talking about Bitcoin should easily have a $5 million TAM, for me, it doesn't make sense that we're going to see these cycles of diminishing returns where Bitcoin goes to 150, 225, 300, 410. You know what I mean? Like when you actually math this stuff out for diminishing returns to happen, that means Bitcoin might take like 100 or 200 or 300 years to get to like $5 million a coin. And I just don't think that's how technologies get adopted. Technologies get adopted in exponential waves. If you actually look at the adoption of 3 technologies that I like to look at, the internet, the automobile, and the smartphone, I think they actually give us a pretty interesting model for what I expect Bitcoin to be adopted, okay? And that is in an exponential wave. So if you take the average of those 3 technologies, it took them around 12 years to go from 0 to 10% adoption. But then it took all 3 of those technologies the same amount of time to go from 10% adoption to 90% adoption, another 12 years. And I think it's pretty interesting that right now Bitcoin is what? It's 14 years old. Again, what happens in the next 14 years? I don't know, but I've been calling 2020 the inflection point, the monetary inflection point. I've been calling it era number 2 of Bitcoin. I believe 2020 is kind of when things changed. And I believe that we're kind of in that second era for Bitcoin where things are beginning to change exponentially. And we're seeing it all in the fundamentals. Like we're seeing, this is the first cycle ever where coins have been leaving the exchanges consistently for 4 years. This is the first cycle ever where in the bear market, the price of Bitcoin crashed from 69K to 15K, but the hash rate has gone up 7x since the bottom of that 2022 bear market, okay? Since China banned Bitcoin mining, the hash rate might actually be up 10x by now, okay? So why? Why is the hash rate diverging from the price? Because this time is different. The nation states are mining Bitcoin. Again, we've been speculating about this for a long time, Opti. You on Simply Bitcoin for years, and I've been speculating about it for years as well. Like nation states have been mining Bitcoin. And now publicly, we can see it. The Kingdom of Bhutan saying, yeah, you know what? 30% of our GDP is now plowed into Bitcoin. We've been openly mining it since 2019. We have Oman investing $1 billion into Bitcoin mining. El Salvador investing $1 billion into Bitcoin mining. Saudi Arabia, the UAE. We have all these countries all around the world publicly investing into Bitcoin mining. So again, privately, you'd have to be stupid if you're a nation state and you're not mining Bitcoin right now. So I think I mean, I could talk about this shit for hours, Opti, but I feel like data's on our side. I do think the fundamentals are shifting, and I think things are getting incredibly bullish. And I think the possibility for us to have a really big cycle, I think it's been underrated in the space. Again, I don't know what's going to happen for certain, but I do think too many people have too much faith in these models, and they're listening to Spaghetti Boy, who's saying sell your Bitcoin at $150,000 a coin because of this model based on this old data that has to be consistently refit and changed all the time to give you such a high R² score. So anyway, the shrimps on the Barbie, as the live chat is saying. What do you think, Opti? What's Bitcoin got cooking on the Barbie for 2025?
A very, very bullish bear. You know, fried bear for everyone out there. But before I move on, and we got a whole show for you guys, jam-packed, a lot of bullish news. It's very nice having a fellow bulltard on the show. You know, Nico's been a bear on the show for way too long. He's too conservative. You know, he becomes a dad and he's all conservative now. And then, you know, he's not bullish anymore. So guys, on Monday when Nico's back, we got to roast him for being a bear. Anyways, let's pay the bills here, guys. You already know the deal. Go to bitcoinwell.com. They are on the mission to enabling independence. It's the only Bitcoin self-custody by default platform. And as you guys know, and hopefully you guys have been following on Twitter, they also just unlocked the MicroStrategy strategy and are doing convertible notes. So love to see it. Love the boys over at Bitcoin Well. And of course, if you are a guy with some deep pockets out there and you're tired of nickel and diming, make sure you get in touch with the Bitcoin Well Infinite guys and gals out there. Bitcoin OTC desk, of course, they have a 50K limit. So if you're trying to buy chunks of Bitcoin at one time, over 50K, get in touch with the Bitcoin Well Infinite team on the OTC side and make sure you are buying some coin. Now, make sure you get your Lightning wallets out there, because once you sign up to Bitcoin Well using the promo code SimplyBTC, you will get some tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well, and you have a chance to win up to 1,000,000 sats. Now, the free alpha out there, guys, hey, I'm blowing it for the Rumble guys, but if you're on Rumble, you already know you're probably the one winning these sats. So 500 sats, first come, first serve. Let's go. Let's get into the show, because we got a jam-packed show for you guys.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to Stamp Seed.
All right, guys, I'm not going to do the Grandpa Paul meme here, the Grandpa Paul bit, but make sure you are backing up your seed phrase, guys. Yes, Bitcoin's at 100K, but you should be securing your seed phrase, like it's worth 10 times what it's worth now. And this is very important right now before you hit the bull run starts getting crazy. Go to stampseed.com and use the promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. I've heard a couple horror stories from some friends that sloppily wrote their seed phrase and are having trouble getting back into their cold storage. So make sure you are securing your backup, because you never know how high the Bitcoin price can go, and you want to ensure you are holding this for the long term. All right, guys, let's get into the numbers. So I don't have Satoshi's chicken, but is this all time? No, it's not all time high. Okay, well, I'll still hit the horns anyways. The Bitcoin price is currently $100,840 per Bitcoin, which means the sats per dollar, aka how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, aka what the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, is currently at 992 sats. Actually, I've been kind of trolling lately. I really like kind of renaming sats to Bitcoin to just kind of get that unit bias FOMO from the normies. So it's worth, one Bitcoin, hold on. $1 can buy you 992 Bitcoin. It's so bad, but I love it. It's so atrocious. It's gross. But hey, let's think about the normies out here. No one wants to buy a bit of a Bitcoin. They want either a whole coin or any Bitcoin. So, hey, I'm still workshopping it, guys. I'm still workshopping it. Anyways, the current block height is 873,535, and we have reclaimed the $2 trillion market cap for Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin versus gold market cap is at 10.92%. Guys, we still have, a 9x in us to beat the gold market cap, and you guys are bearish out there. Couldn't be me, can't relate. Anyways, the total percentage of Bitcoin that will ever be issued, I repeat, the total percentage of Bitcoin that will ever be issued is currently at 94.24%. You might want to buy some. And current money supply, current circulation of Bitcoin, somewhere around 19.7 million Bitcoin currently circulating. All right, guys, I hate to do this to you, but it has to be done. It's the numbers. And we're going to be talking about the ETFs for a little bit, so bear with me. But there has been a historic milestone for the ETFs. I talked about this a couple months ago about how much Bitcoin the ETFs are scooping up. So shouts out to Eric Balkunis, of course, senior ETF analyst at Bloomberg. And he is, absolutely shocked right now. So what's the news? The U.S. spot ETFs have just passed Satoshi's holding of total Bitcoin held, and now they're holding more than 1.1 million Bitcoin have been swallowed up by the Bitcoin ETFs, more than anyone in the world. No longer, I think, can we have the Satoshi FUD? And I'll break it down for you guys in a little bit. And it's not even a year old, guys. Like, it's literally a baby. This is Eric Balkunis words. It's just mind blowing how much Bitcoin is being scooped up by the ETFs, which is kind of what me and Luke were saying in the beginning. Like, institutional demand is here. They want your Bitcoin. Remember, we've been saying all year long, like, don't sell your Bitcoin. You're selling it to Michael Saylor. We kind of updated it to don't sell your Bitcoin. You're selling it to Larry Fink. Now it's becoming very clear. Don't sell your Bitcoin. You are selling it to Wall Street. They want your Bitcoin, so you need to hodl on to that coin. So let's look at some of the Bitcoin holders here, biggest holders in the world. Of course, the combined U.S. spot ETFs hold 1,104,534, and they're scooping up incredible amounts of Bitcoin a day. Obviously, Satoshi holds 1.1 million, and then we got a couple exchanges, Binance 633,000, MicroStrategy with 400,000 Bitcoin, the U.S. government with roughly around 200,000, Chinese government with a little less, 194,000, and then, of course, other exchanges and companies with a couple 100,000 under control. Now, looking into this, guys, I already told you, the total spot Bitcoin ETFs have swallowed more Bitcoin than Satoshi himself. And you can kind of break it down. Well, who's the biggest holder? It is BlackRock with 521,000 Bitcoin under their spot Bitcoin ETF, followed by, of course, Grayscale and Fidelity. So you can tell there has been a clear winner here of what is the best performing ETF in the market, which is, of course, BlackRock. Like, who is really surprised here? And I'm not surprised here. We all know BlackRock basically owns, every company in the world, every valuable company in the world. But there is some interesting maths here, and it's getting kind of crazy. So shouts out to Thomas Farrer of heyapollo.com. And this math is just crazy. This stuff is just mind blowing. So he tweeted and he goes, when BlackRock holds 1 million Bitcoin, obviously in their ETF, and they push the price to $1 million per coin, BlackRock will make $2.5 billion in fees every year forever. Absolutely mind-blowing. Am I a fan of this? Not at all, but this is the math, guys, and this is why they are so bullish on Bitcoin. This is why they're gobbling up so much Bitcoin, is because they see the writing on the wall. And, really relating this to the original clip of the show, if you're not buying Bitcoin, you're literally just not going to be able to compete in the world that we're headed to. What's the Carlos Matos tweet? We no longer live in a world we once did, guys. It is a new paradigm. And if you don't have Bitcoin, you are being left in the dust. Again, we're saying it's moved from 1 to 5 to 10% allocation. I would argue if you're of my age, a millennial or younger, you should be at least 50% plus. Live in your mom's basement, stack as much Bitcoin as possible. Obviously, I'm kind of trolling a little bit. It's jokes. But realistically, you should try to buy as much Bitcoin as humanly possible and still be able to pay your rent, buy groceries, et cetera, have a little good time and, enjoy life a little bit. But you need to be stacking Bitcoin. And I think that signal is finally spreading to everyone out there that, hey, I need to add Bitcoin to my portfolio or else I'm being left in the dust. I've been saying it all year, basically. Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. Or actually, I've been saying Bitcoin is the fastest race in the horse, saying it the wrong way. But you know what I'm saying. It's becoming very clear. There is a clear winner. There is winners and losers out there. And if you aren't saving in Bitcoin, if you don't have Bitcoin in your portfolio, then you're a loser. You need to add Bitcoin to your portfolio. And I think we're going to see some of the biggest, wealthiest names and companies in the world get their Bitcoin allocation in 2025. And this is why, Luke and I kind of keep saying that this time feels different. So anyways, Luke, what's your thoughts on the ETF, scooping up more than Satoshi? How does this make you feel? What's your thinking process behind this?
Yeah, so from a big picture view, I'm always been very cautious and skeptical of the Bitcoin ETFs coming in. Literally the day after BlackRock filed their Bitcoin spot ETF document way back in mid-2023, I did a thread that got a lot of attention the day after, and I said, have a look at the wording buried on page number 21 of the filing, where they said, BlackRock openly said, in the event of a hard fork, we have no obligation to actually choose to follow the most economic chain of Bitcoin. So obviously, like, I think there's a possibility in the future that we do see, you know, a attack on Bitcoin, or maybe the ETFs holding so much Bitcoin, it could be a bad thing. Maybe it's going to be nationalized by the government. Maybe it's going to be the new 6102 honeypot. Maybe BlackRock's even going to try to fork the chain and create this green and clean version of Bitcoin that's, maybe even proof of stake, or, it doesn't do proof of work because that's dirty and, it's not ESG. Again, I'm not saying any of this is a certainty, but I'm saying that there's, I think, a higher probability than most people that, maybe the ETFs could be a bad thing in the future. Again, just tinfoil hatting right here. You can think I'm crazy, but I think there's two things to be cautious of with the ETFs. From day one, I've always been cautious. So not your keys, not your cheese. Just because BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world doesn't mean they will not rug pull your Bitcoin in the future. Again, there are no certainties in life. You don't know what's going to happen, right? But I think from a number go up price standpoint, it's incredibly bullish. How could it not be incredibly bullish? The world's largest asset manager with $10 trillion of asset under management is saying Bitcoin is going to digitize gold. Bitcoin is an international asset. Bitcoin is an asset you buy when you are fearful. Like, Larry Fink is saying Bitcoin's a risk-off asset. Larry Fink and BlackRock are even publishing reports where they are openly saying the optimal allocation for the past decade, it wasn't the 60-40 portfolio. It wasn't even buying high-risk tech stocks. It was actually being 84.9% allocated to Bitcoin, and only put 15% of your other assets into the trash, into bonds and stocks and cash. You don't want to hold that. The optimal allocation was 85% Bitcoin, right? Those are the research reports BlackRock is publishing. So obviously this is bullish. Obviously this is great for number go up. Obviously this is huge social signaling. Obviously this de-risks Bitcoin for the masses when you have the world's largest asset manager come in and embrace and welcome Bitcoin. And obviously we're going to begin to see this competitive FOMO play out. Because like you were saying earlier, Opti, it starts with a 1% allocation, and those guys saying, yeah, Bitcoin's okay. It's a diversification asset. But as Michael Saylor continues to say, if you have the winning trade, or if you have the better thing, you don't diversify. You go all in on the better thing. Okay? This is something that nobody understands. And this is why I think Bitcoin's going to be a lot more valuable than most people think, much quicker than most people think. Because when you have the winning thing, you don't do a 1% allocation. You don't do a 2% allocation. You put all your money in the better thing. Okay? It's like Michael Saylor says, do you build a boat that's 10% wooden, 10% steel? Do you build an airplane that's 50% aluminum and 50% wood? No, you don't diversify by building something that's supposed to float or fly with wood, because it is inferior. I think it's the same thing with portfolio allocations. Why have 10% of your money in a melting ice cube? Why have 50% of your money on a stock brokerage platform that could freeze your assets just because you're told that diversification is a good thing, you have to buy stocks, because that's the way the world has worked for the past 50 years. But nobody thinks, why have we had to diversify for the past 50 years? Why has real estate been grossly monetized for the past 50 years? Because there was no solution to us going off the gold standard. Now we have the solution, and it's only a matter of time before all of these big brain Wall Street gurus come to the realization that, hang on a minute, diversification makes no sense. A 1%, 5%, 10% allocation to Bitcoin makes no sense. We need a 100% allocation because this is the solution. You don't diversify into the solution. You put all your eggs in the winning basket, and Bitcoin is that winning basket. And as we showed you guys in the clip in the beginning of today's live stream, we have somebody from Charles Schwab, $7 trillion asset manager, openly saying, yeah, if you don't have at least a 10% allocation, What did she say, Opti? You are losing?
Yeah,
or
you're
you are
not
falling
being
behind?
competitive. You are losing, and you are literally not being competitive here. But actually, I guess I got fact checked in real time by Luke. I said 25% was the BlackRock report. Sorry, I wasn't bullish enough. It was 85%. So here we are on that. Love to hear. But there is one thing I do kind of want to talk about. We are kind of going a little long, super bullish today. But, the classic FUD line of, what happens if Satoshi sells his million Bitcoin? Well, now it looks like we're kind of, that's kind of being put to bed here. It's like the US spot Bitcoin ETFs now hold more Bitcoin than Satoshi. And so I think, a classic trope in Bitcoin is that all of the FUD lines that constantly get recycled one by one usually drop like dominoes. And, we just keep proving that, hey, none of this matters really. Like Bitcoin's being adopted in real time and people are seeing the use of Bitcoin, permissionless, censorship resistant, money, hard cap. This is starting to become a very viable solution for everyone in the world. And now they're starting to wake up to it. So, hey, if you're being bearish, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're looking at, but it's time to flip the script and get bullish. Anyways, Luke, you want to chime in? I saw you kind of trying to chime in there for a second.
No, I talk too much, my friend.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, guys, if you are enjoying the show, we're only halfway through. Make sure you smash the like button, smash the like button, comment. Let us know if you're bullish. And of course, subscribe if you think we're giving you guys value. But we're only halfway through, guys. We still have some more bullish stuff for you on today's show.
I want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your peace.
All right, guys. I'm not going to model completely, but make sure you get yourself a Passport by Foundation. Use the promo code Simply. It's almost Christmas, guys. Maybe you want to buy these for your friend and your family. I think these are mother-friendly hardware wallets, completely open source, connected with the Envoy, and it's pretty much been the easiest hardware wallet I've used, and I love it, man. Okay. Anyways, we got some updates for you guys, boys and girls. It seems like we might have a very bullish administration coming in the US. And I know you guys have yelled at us all year. Like, I'm sick of what someone said in the chat yesterday, like I'm sick of the Republican propaganda on the show. Well, sorry, boys. Hey, they're coming out and being super bullish on Bitcoin or, crypto. And this is a good thing for our industry. If we could get 4 years of cover, there's no way they're going to be able to put Bitcoin back in the box. It's going to take over the world. And as an American, hey, I want that to happen. I want America to be the Bitcoin hub of the world. We already are, the leader in Silicon Valley out there. And I think it's only fitting. Bitcoin is as American as apple pie. Anyways, what am I talking about? If you aren't following the news as closely as all of us Bitcoiners, or rather us here at Simply Bitcoin, yesterday, Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of the United States, president-elect, just announced that David Sachs will be his, quote, White House AI and crypto czar. So I'll break down David Sachs for you guys in a minute, but let's read this Truth Post social. So in this important role of White House AI and crypto czar, David will guide policy for the administration in AI and cryptocurrency, two areas critical to the future of American competitiveness. David will focus on making America the clear global leader in both areas. He will safeguard free speech online and steer us away from big tech bias and censorship. He will work on a legal framework so the crypto industry has the clarity it has been asking for and can thrive in the U.S. David will also lead the Presidential Council of Advisors for Science and Technology. First of all, it is a little surreal. It's kind of crazy just hearing, an incoming president even acknowledge the Bitcoin industry. Obviously, the Bitcoin pact, the lobbying that the Bitcoiners did to get him elected, remember, is $135 million. So obviously, we're a big part of the lobbying base here. And as Kaiser always says, he who has the Bitcoins make the rule. Well, let's just look into who David Sachs is and what does he say about Bitcoin. And we got a great clip here from Anthony Pompilano with David Sachs, and let's just hear it from his own words.
What are your views on Bitcoin, and how do you think of that asset given kind of the macro backdrop?
Well, the thing that's interesting about Bitcoin, I've been interested in Bitcoin since I think I first bought it in 2012, maybe.
Okay.
And we invested in a number of, we're not a crypto investor, but we did express a thesis back in 2017, 2018, that we thought that crypto would graduate from being an institutional asset class, from being really more of a consumer retail phenomenon. And so we ended up investing in institutional custody through a company called BitGo. And we also invested in we're the seed investor in Multicoin Capital, which was a crypto-focused hedge fund. We basically believe that, that as crypto matured into an asset class, you would need specialized fund managers, of which we were not really. I'm a SaaS investor. But I'm like, but let's invest in these guys because they're focused on the problem. So we expressed a number of these views, and it generally has worked out very well for us. But in any event, so I've been interested in Bitcoin for a while, and I think the transformational part of Bitcoin is this idea that we could have non-fiat money, right? We just, as we're talking about with the Fed, there is a huge risk of currency debasement when the government is in control, and particularly when you have the world's reserve currency. There's just such an enormous temptation to print money to finance your budget and to rack up loans that become unpayable. We're at what, like 130% of GDP now we owe. So we owe an amount of money greater than the size of our entire economy or our economic output. That sounds very hard to repay to me. So the temptation will eventually be to monetize the debt away, basically to debase the currency to pay for this debt. That's always been a risk throughout history. And now what Bitcoin offers is a different kind of currency where it's not backed by a government, it's backed by math, it's backed by encryption. And so you don't have to trust the government that there will only be 21 million Bitcoin. It's in the code, and so you just have to trust that Bitcoin effectively won't be cracked. You just have to believe that the system is secure. And I think a lot of people might, over time, gradually think that's a better form of money.
Two other questions.
Okay, guys, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of okay with this pick. Like, I don't really have too much bad stuff to say, though we do kind of have to acknowledge, he is kind of part of the PayPal mafia. That could be some concerns for people. He is on the All In podcast, with Chamath and Jason, who they are Bitcoiners. You could argue maybe they're a little bit of shitcoiners, but I think this is good signal that we're going to see at least some very favorable regulation and clarity in regards to Bitcoin. Of course, you know, David Sachs runs one of the oldest Bitcoin and crypto funds, and looking into, you know, some of the portfolios, currently he's at Craft Ventures, you can see some of the companies that he's invested in. And obviously there's a lot of things that aren't Bitcoin on this list, but there is some very notable Bitcoin companies that they have, you know, gave seed capital to. Obviously BitGo, you guys know BitGo, Bitwise as well. He kind of mentioned that institutional management of Bitcoin and crypto as well. And he said multi-coin capital as well. So, and then Folds in here, guys. So this guy knows what's going on in the Bitcoin space. You know, he's been buying since 2013. I'm going to argue that I think this is going to be very bullish for the Bitcoin industry or even the shitcoin industry at large. I think there's going to be a lot of good clarity. He's obviously going to be giving Trump some good insights on the market. Yes, we've been saying it for a while. We might be getting unleashed, you know, the shitcoin tsunami on all of this regulation as well, which is something we'll keep watching. But you add David Sachs as the new crypto czar, which is a new role, and you could argue that it's like a, you know, fake role, but we've seen these kind of roles happen for presidents in the past. But you add that with Paul Atkins as the new SEC head, and again, this is going to be super bullish for Bitcoin. And I don't know about you guys, but I'd much rather have some favorable tailwinds in regards to Bitcoin than the last 4 years that we've seen under the Biden administration with Operation Choke Point 2.0 and them trying to stifle and stop the adoption of Bitcoin. So again, this is a very bullish show today. Not only price predictions, but at least we're seeing in the US that, you know, speculatively and optimistically speaking, we should see very favorable laws and regulations around Bitcoin. Obviously, my point of view is I just want them to get out of the way, man. If they could get out of the way of Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies and hopefully bring back some of the Bitcoin companies and entrepreneurs that have left the last 4 years, this is going to be, you know, a new renaissance for Bitcoin in the US. And I'm tentatively excited for what's going to happen in 2025 with these roles around Bitcoin. You could argue there's a lot of other problems, but hey, at least in regards to Bitcoin, it looks like we are going to have a bullish and clear road for 2025. Anyways, Luke, what's your thoughts on David Sachs becoming the new AI and crypto czar for President Donald J. Trump?
My thoughts more broadly are pretty much summarized by Rexona's 72-hour comment in the chat. We are no longer just seeing tailwinds for Bitcoin. We are seeing tail hurricanes, baby. I'm shocked that all of the bullish things that are happening. I'm shocked that we're getting somebody like David Sachs appointed by Donald Trump. Yes, he's not a Bitcoin maxi. Yes, I wish he was more bullish on that podcast, the All In podcast, and maybe he was like able to rein in some of his shitcoining friends and some of the trash that they do say on that very popular podcast. But I think overall, he's certainly better than a lot of the other selections that were, let's just say, in previous governments in the US. I don't even want to name names. I mean, you guys know the kind of people that we are electing as leaders in America, or the Western world in general. If you have a look at the health ministers all around the world, they certainly don't look healthy. And if you look at I'm going to be really careful what I say here, but let's just say some of the health officials, they were not healthy people, and some of the things they were saying were not healthy. So I think that we're beginning to see people elected into the Trump government that actually understand not only economic reality, but just reality as it stands in the world, in other industries. We have RFK being elected. And again, he is talking about certain things to do with health. But if you just look at the guy, I'm more likely to listen to something he says because you look at him at age 60, he's in better shape than me. The dude's absolutely jacked, okay? He clearly looks after his health. And now we have business leaders and people who have actually built companies and understand the fact that US debt is unsustainable. They're now being elected and put into positions of power. We have, as much as it's a little bit of a meme, but we have Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. Nobody has asked the government to be efficient. Nobody in power has even mentioned the fact that maybe the government should stop spending money and be more efficient for 100 years, okay? Nobody's given a shit about it. So yes, he's not the best candidate for that position, but I think he's better than what we've had. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit conflicted because I think everyone knows me and I don't trust politicians at all. Very clear, very obviously, I think at this point. But again, just hearing them talking, actually, someone said a great comment in here, something on the line. Let me see if I can find it real quick before I just give you guys some blank air here. All right. Shout out to Keith. He goes, all I heard was, quote, a better form of money, and you can't unthink that stuff. And I think that is kind of the signal here that we're seeing. You know, yes, he is a VC capitalist. Yes, he kind of has endorsed some shit coins out there. But I mean, in that clip with Pomp, I think he sounds like a Bitcoiner. I think anyone that understands Bitcoin and understands fiat is understanding the same problem, is they are printing way too much money. And what does that do for you guys out there? It is debasing your holdings. It's making you poorer. And the more money they print, the poorer we all get. And yes, some government efficiency would be great. Who wouldn't like to see some efficiency coming out of the government? But as the classic trope goes, the scariest couple of words you can hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I don't think anyone trusts the government to be efficient at all, but hopefully we do see some sort of efficiency coming out of this. Again, my baseline here is just, can you guys get out of the way of Bitcoin's potential and Bitcoin entrepreneurs? You know, the free market and entrepreneurs are the one that really drive innovation forward. And what we've seen the last, 15 years, but specifically the last 4 years, is them standing in our way and literally hurting the population out there, not only in the US, but globally. Because of course, I say it all the time, the U.S. kind of exports two things. It's our debt, aka our currency, and our culture. So whatever the U.S. does, everyone starts to follow suit. And we've seen this play out very clearly in regards to Trump announcing a strategic stockpile or reserve for Bitcoin. Now everyone has to take these conversations seriously. So the game theory is playing out. I'm pretty excited to see what happens in 2025. Obviously, we'll be here. You know me, I only pull my punches to not get us banned on YouTube. But, I'm very skeptical. So we'll be covering this throughout the year. And hopefully we do see some very favorable stuff come down the pipeline. And it just means, number go up. And Bitcoin's going to be proliferated around the world. And that's what we're here for. We want as many people as possible holding Bitcoin in self-custody. So if we see anything that does the opposite, no, we will be vocal about it. So, man, I'm tentatively bullish. I'm tentatively optimistic about this. And it's looking like, in regards to Bitcoin, the Trump administration might be following through on its promises. So we'll see what happens day one. We'll see if, Ross is free day one. We'll see how far they can push the strategic Bitcoin stockpile, and we'll see the aftermath of that. But, man, I'm starting to get the tingle, Luke. I'm starting to get a tingle. But let's get into the culture, because I told Luke I'm just going to give you time to be stupidly bullish. Everyone knows Luke is a bulltard every single time. So if you thought the beginning was bullish, I think the rest of the show is going to be even more bullish. Let's go.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Also, gotta casually drop this in here, HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at HIVE Digital Tech, or check out their website, hivedigitaltech.com.
All right, boys and girls, of course, sorry, we got to pay the bills. Not sorry, but make sure you go to BitBlockBoom on April 3rd through the 6th, 2025 in Dallas. It's a small conference. You could literally hang out with all the cool Bitcoiners. Usually, this is where LobbyCon was created at. You just show up, man. Just show up, buy a ticket, hang out in the pool with all your favorite Bitcoiners. A true Bitcoin conference. And of course, use the promo code BBB21 21, all lowercase. Again, lowercase triple B 21, and you can get $100 off on your ticket. So, Luke, thanks for coming on. He's off air for a moment, but man, Luke, we've had, got to get the monster in. I don't know how we can top the bullishness on this, but I'm sure you will find a way. And, you know, I actually learned this the other day when we had Brandon from Green Candle Investments on. So I think I want to start with this question, which is, I asked Brandon the same one. It's, what is the big idea that you think everyone is missing right now? And we've covered a lot on this show, so if you want to rehash some things, that's fine. But what, in your opinion, is the big idea that is going to take the world by storm? And you can't just say Bitcoin. You got to give them some alpha here. So what's the big idea you want to share with everyone today, Luke?
The big idea is nobody is paying attention to the underlying fundamentals, and nobody understands how technologies get adopted in exponential waves. And Bitcoin's going to be adopted exponentially, and it's going to shock people. And the numbers we're going to see aren't going to make any sense. And I just really think the Bitcoin scarcity, it's going to lead to some pretty crazy things. Okay. Like Bitcoin, like we said earlier, it has a $900 trillion TAM. I genuinely think it's going to be capturing half of the world's store of value assets. And I think it's going to happen much quicker than most people think. And when you really start to run the numbers and you're talking about $500 trillion of hypothetical demand for Bitcoin with a 6x multiplier effect where it is today, and that multiplier effect will become it'll become higher as Bitcoin is gobbled up and accumulated and hoarded by people like Michael Saylor, who are going to hold it for 100 years, that multiplier effect is going to rise and shit's just going to get wild. Numbers aren't going to make sense. We're not talking about 5, 10, 20, $100 million per Bitcoin. We're talking about numbers much higher, okay? And again, all of the numbers that I like to talk about, I like to kind of say, look, this is today's purchasing power. When I say Bitcoin will easily be worth $100 million a coin much quicker than you think, I'm saying it's going to buy you 10 Malibu beach houses on the coastfront in California, okay? That's the purchasing power I expect. One of those puppies in California goes for about 10 million. This is like prime real estate, some of the best real estate you can get in the world. And I won't be parting with a significant amount of my Bitcoin until I can, buy 10 of those with a Bitcoin. Okay, that's, I believe, the end game for where Bitcoin is. And I think people just aren't paying attention. Not only, I think, firstly, they don't understand money is a winner-take-all game. So just this idea of Bitcoin being just another asset and it just stopping at $50 or $100 trillion per coin, it's a stupid idea. CK Snarks says it the best. It's actually the least likely outcome that Bitcoin is just digital gold. And it's just at 500K, $1 million. It's $2 million. And it's just this thing that's a 1%, 2% allocation. CK has been screaming about this for years, and I have as well. Like, it is the least likely outcome. Bitcoin either captures the large majority of that $900 trillion of assets in the world, or it goes to zero and it dies. Bitcoin's a binary bet, okay? And it being at 500K or $1 million or 2 million, all of a sudden that unlocks a completely new realm of capital that can now allocate to Bitcoin in size. Okay, 2 years ago, Microsoft couldn't even consider the possibility of putting some of their $100 billion of cash into Bitcoin when it was like a $200, $300 billion asset. They would have moved the market too much. But now the Bitcoin's a $2 trillion asset and on the way to being a $5, $10 trillion asset in the next 12 months, we see these new pools of capital unlocked. So I think that's the big idea. Bitcoin is a binary bet and technologies get adopted in exponential waves. Now, a related note is I believe everybody's measuring Bitcoin adoption wrong. So when most people say, okay, Luke, but you say we're in this like second era of Bitcoin. You say that things are starting to go exponential, but on an S curve, things don't start going exponential until you hit that 10% adoption rate. And people will correctly say adoption in normie world is like 1%, right? But this is because people are measuring adoption wrong. People are looking at Bitcoin being used as a medium of exchange as adoption. They're saying, how many of my friends and family members go down to their local store and buy a coffee or a Monster with Bitcoin? And that is one form of adoption. And that is a very low form of adoption. Again, that's probably less than 1% globally, right? Even in El Salvador, maybe 10 or 20% of the shops in Bitcoin country are accepting Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. But that's the wrong way to measure adoption, I believe. I believe there's two adoption curves that you need to be paying attention to in Bitcoin. The first is obviously medium of exchange. How many people are buying coffee with Bitcoin? But then there's the second one that I think is more impactful for price, okay? And that is how many people are storing their value in Bitcoin. But more importantly, this is the monetization adoption curve of Bitcoin. What percentage of the people who control the majority of that $900 trillion of money in the world are adopting Bitcoin? This is the far more important one because this is Bitcoin's TAM, store of value asset. Okay. Now, what percentage of those people are buying Bitcoin? Let me tell you, it's higher than 1%. And these are the people who matter. The people who control the $900 trillion, they're the people you should be paying attention to. And this is the big idea. Nobody's watching the adoption rates that we see across nation states, sovereign wealth funds, asset managers, corporations. They are the people who matter. They are the people who, in Michael Saylor's case, own 2% of the Bitcoin supply. There's 2,500 billionaires, and one billionaire already owns 2% of the Bitcoin supply. There's 58,000 public companies. One public company is squatting on 2% of the supply. Okay, just look at the world's largest asset managers. BlackRock. The beginning of today's show, we're talking about Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Goldman Sachs. If you look at the top 10 largest asset managers around the world, like 8 of them are like bullish on Bitcoin in a really big way. Okay, so what's that? 80% adoption? We are seeing 80% adoption in the industry that matters, in the realm that matters, the world's largest asset managers. What about sovereign wealth funds? 5 out of the 10 largest sovereign wealth funds are also buying Bitcoin. Qatar, the UAE has 2 really big sovereign wealth funds. There's 5 of them out of 10. What about pension funds? Some of the world's largest pension funds are buying Bitcoin. Japan, the world's largest pension fund with a $1.7 trillion pension fund, they came out a couple of months ago and they said, yeah, you know what? We are investigating Bitcoin for diversification strategies to hedge against the risk of the Japanese yen. This is coming from the world's largest pension fund in Japan saying, we don't want to hold our own currency. It's a shitcoin. We're looking at Bitcoin and gold as diversifications. So again, I believe the big idea is everybody's paying too much attention to medium of exchange adoption, and they're not paying attention to the hedge funds that control $5 trillion worth of assets. Okay. Of the 25 largest hedge funds around the world, 60% of them own Bitcoin. 16 of the top 25 largest hedge funds in the world own Bitcoin. And 47% of all of the hedge funds, again, there's 15,000 hedge funds, own Bitcoin. Okay, these are the guys who matter. The hedge fund is a $5 trillion industry. Pay attention to that. Sovereign wealth funds control $50 trillion of capital. 50% of the largest sovereign wealth funds own Bitcoin. 50% adoption. What about the world's largest asset managers? Tens of trillions of dollars. Pay attention to these guys, not your mom or your dad or Auntie Jane or Bob, your uncle, who has $100 net worth and they're not using Bitcoin because they're too smart, okay? Technologies are never adopted or driven by the masses. The masses do not matter. It's the visionaries. Henry Ford said in the early 1900s, if I had have asked the everyday person what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They can't think outside of the current paradigm and think, maybe I'm going to invent an automobile. Or even when they see the automobile, they think, oh, it's boiling the oceans, it's dirty, it's so dangerous, right? Again, so the big idea is people are paying attention to the wrong data. And right now, we talked about it earlier in the show, the Bitcoin ETFs own 1 million coins in a year. Public companies hold 500,000 Bitcoin. And a lot of that buying has been in the past 12 to 18 months. If you simply extrapolate those trends out, not a lot of Bitcoin on exchanges in 4 years' time, baby. I actually think the exchanges are going to be drained in 4 years' time. We've seen over 1 million Bitcoin leave the exchanges since 2020. Again, 2020 was that inflection point where the first time in Bitcoin's life, coins started actually leaving the exchanges. Again, think about how significant that is. For 12 years between 2008 and 2020, the coins or the number of Bitcoin on exchanges only grew. That's because people didn't understand Bitcoin. That's because the big boys weren't saying, hang on a minute, Bitcoin's an asset you buy, you take off the exchanges, and you never sell for 100 years, like Michael Saylor says. But for the past 4, nearly 5 years now, we've seen that trend change. We've seen 35% of all the available Bitcoin disappear off the exchanges. And they're just moving to the wallets of people who are not selling their Bitcoin, long-term holders. The amount of Bitcoin held by long-term holders is at all-time high. That was a long rant. I do this
a lot to unpack there. I don't know where to go from there, man. But I absolutely hold on. Absolutely love it. That was the great summation of what the big idea is. And man, I really like that metric because I did this meme a while ago. I can't find it on my Twitter, but I tried to, 65 IQ explain the adoption curve and what is going on with Bitcoin. And I transposed the Bitcoin price over like an X and Y chart. And it really was like, the X line was adoption of, everyday people, how many people are holding Bitcoin, and the Y was just the conviction levels of these high net worth individuals. And if you put, you transpose the Bitcoin price above it, I think that really starts to make sense to people of like what is actually going on. Obviously, we know as Bitcoin grows and old buyers become new sellers, new people start to enter the market, and that's the distribution level of Bitcoin. But the thing that really takes the Bitcoin price up is these really rich people with high conviction. And I think you did a very great little, summary of what's going on here, Luke. But I do want to maybe nitpick a little here, because you did say there's not going to be any Bitcoin on exchanges in 4 years, but we all know that, hey, they just got to give us a good price to, sell this Bitcoin. So Bitcoin will kind of, get back to and, on the exchanges because, hey, old buyers are going to want to lock in some profits. But there was a number that you kind of triggered in my mind, considering how much Bitcoin, the spot Bitcoin ETFs are scooping up right now. I saw a number and it said something on the lines of, if the Bitcoin price doesn't double or triple or quadruple within the next couple of years, then Larry Fink and the spot Bitcoin ETF, company, and all the people out there, like the ilk of Wall Street, they can buy another million Bitcoin in about a year or so. So I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the Bitcoin price has to start pumping. It seems like it has to go up just to kind of maintain the economics that we've seen in Bitcoin play out for a little while. So I don't know, man. Luke, I'm starting to feel a little bullish, more bullish than usual today. So I don't know. You want to add a little more on that? Because I do have some other topics here that I know you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on that one, the big idea is the supply suffocation is going to happen, gradually, then suddenly. And I think like a lot of people had the wrong idea of the supply suffocation. I don't think coins leaving the exchanges over the next 2 months means price has to go up. For me, I've always said that the reason why I'm so focused on watching the number of Bitcoin on exchanges is because when that hits zero, that is when we find out who is swimming naked. And that is when we find out which exchanges have been selling paper Bitcoin. Because when there is zero Bitcoin on exchanges publicly, everybody can see that on Twitter and they're posting the charts and they're trying to withdraw Bitcoin off Coinbase. And Coinbase is saying, yeah, you know what, might take a week or 2 weeks or a month. We know that they're pissing on our shoulders and telling us it's raining, okay? We know that they're lying to us. And that's when the real price of Bitcoin, it's not 200,000, 300,000, it's much, much higher. So that's why I'm so interested in the exchanges. And yeah, that's the big idea is people aren't thinking about what does it look like if there are no Bitcoin on exchanges. And that's kind of where we start rapidly approaching Bitcoin's TAM much quicker than most people think.
Yeah, TAM is total addressable market, guys, for you guys not in the know. Anyways, Luke, you know, all I heard was all your models are destroyed. And you did throw a little jab earlier on the show. So, and I know you wanted to talk about it. And this is all the rage right now is the power law. So I don't know. I know you wanted to hit this. What's your thoughts on the power law?
Yeah, the power law is going to break.
Let's go.
Power law is going to be completely destroyed. Again, no disrespect to Giovanni. I love the fact that he's trying to contribute to the Bitcoin space, doing work. You know, I mean, I love anybody who has contributions. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm attacking the person. I'm just attacking the idea. And I think the idea of extrapolating the first 15 years of Bitcoin data into the future, where for the first 12 years of Bitcoin's life, 99.9% of the people who mattered weren't buying Bitcoin. Okay, 99.9% of people who were buying Bitcoin pre-2020 were retail. This was like, and how much money does retail control in the world? How much money out of that 900 trillion total addressable market cap does retail control? 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 10 trillion max, 20 trillion? Retail doesn't matter. The masses don't matter. And these cycles and these models that we saw play out when retail was dominating the market, yes, all humans are the same, but what retail does is different to what smart money does. Okay? Smart money isn't going to disappear from Bitcoin for 2 years when the price goes down 20%. That's why I believe we had 2-year-long bear markets. And that's because, why? 99.9% of the people buying Bitcoin pre-2020, they were retail money. Okay? So everybody's taking what I believe is faulty data pre-2020, and they're saying this is exactly how BlackRock and Michael Saylor are going to behave. Michael Saylor is going to behave the same way that retail did. And they're also assuming that they have the same amount of capital. They're also saying that retail has the same ability to move the market that Michael Saylor does. And that's not true. In the past 2 weeks, Michael Saylor's bought 130,000 Bitcoin. That's 300 days of new supply being bought by one person. So I think, as Richard Jones in the chat says, Godzilla is coming. All of your models will be destroyed, completely devastated. Bitcoin goes to the moon. And it's all because of this billionaire FOMO we have. This is another big idea I've got. This show might go a little bit long, but another big idea.
Rip it. Let the boy cook. Let the boy cook.
Let's cook, baby. Big idea is the billionaires are greedy, right? Everybody's greedy. It's human nature. And what happens when Michael Saylor's just walking around with that big swinging, let's be careful with what we say, but right now, Michael Saylor's company's gone from $1 billion market cap to $90 billion market cap. And all of a sudden, he's overtaking all of these guys who think they're so rich, so brilliant, so intelligent. And what happens when he continues to climb that world's richest man leaderboard? I believe we see competitive FOMO. I believe people, some billionaires, I don't want to name names, but some of the billionaires like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, you know, all these guys, they look at their net worth compared to others, and it's like a race. It's a competition. Oh, I'm the second richest. I'm the third richest. I want to be number one, big swinging Chad. You know what I mean? I believe it is a competition. And pretty soon, really soon, in the next 12 months, we are beginning to find out that the only way to be that number one top dog and to have the world's most profitable company and to be the world's richest man is to be significantly long Bitcoin. And eventually, people are going to have to come to the realization that the only way you stay richer than MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor is you buy more Bitcoin than MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor. Right now, that's nearly feasibly impossible because Michael Saylor has 400,000 Bitcoin and he owns 2% of the supply. So that means out of the 2,500 billionaires who the majority of them want to be richer than Michael Saylor, their only option and way to be richer than Michael Saylor is to buy more Bitcoin than Michael Saylor. But again, there's only 2 million Bitcoin on exchanges. So that means if you need more than 400,000 Bitcoin to be richer than Michael Saylor, there's only enough Bitcoin for what? 5 of the 2,500 billionaires to be richer than Michael Saylor. So this is just another big idea. We're going to see billionaire FOMO. We're going to see public corporation FOMO. We're going to see hedge fund FOMO. And it's going to be a race for the scarcest asset. And they're all going to want to hold, not all, but a lot of these entities who are buying Bitcoin, yes, some of them will trade. But a lot of these entities will just be buying Bitcoin for 100 years, like Michael Saylor. And I believe these guys who, like the hedge funds, control $5 trillion, or like the asset managers, control 50 trillion. These guys taking a 1%, 2%, 10% allocation to Bitcoin, them buying at $500,000 a coin, they are going to matter a lot more than the retail plebs like us who are selling 10% of our stack to upgrade our lifestyle. So yes, you're always going to see Bitcoin sold to exchanges. When Bitcoin hits 1 million, sure, I'll peel off a little bit and sell a 1%, 2%, 5% of my Bitcoin position that I've hodled since 2017, right? But me selling a little piece of my position to BlackRock, we don't matter. Like, we're the fucking masses. The people who matter are the people who are going to be on the other side of that trade, and they're indiscriminately allocating to Bitcoin for 10 or 20 years. So I think that's the big idea. The billionaire FOMO is coming, and I just don't think people are ready for what happens.
Yeah, this comment. Those people's 1% stack is more than my 100%, like 1,000% stack. Oh man, that's so funny. That is hilarious. Yeah, love it, Luke. Actually, I do kind of want to. We are kind of running a little long today, but I want to let Luke cook a little more. I kind of have a very similar thinking because I think I said it might have been this week. I forget where I said it, but I'm also getting the same kind of trend and vibe that you're getting in. I've been kind of flipping the diminishing returns meme on its head, where I'm kind of feeling like we're going to get not necessarily diminishing returns, but like diminishing volatility on the downside because of what you said. We're like, the quote unquote smart money's coming in. They're not going to FOMO or panic into the market. And when I hear all that and like knowing the psychology of these asset managers, it makes me think like they're going to be holding that Bitcoin and not selling it and not necessarily trying to trade it. Obviously, some people will trade that Bitcoin, but all of that is just making me feel like maybe we aren't going to see, 90%, 70% corrections. Maybe, it's going to be a 50 or 30% correction, which is still going to hurt if you're a Bitcoiner that's all in on Bitcoin. But I would love to see dampened volatility on the downside. And that would very provably and with data show me that, people are starting to catch on to this Bitcoin thing. And as I say it all the time, well, actually I got corrected, but I was saying for a while that the Bitcoin price is a real-time metric of the world's understanding of Bitcoin. I think it was Matthew J in the chat that corrected me, and he was like, no, it's the bottom of the bear market that is the real-time metric of people's understanding of Bitcoin. So I think you kind of touched on that, Luke, where you're kind of seeing the same thing, where you're like, these hedge fund managers, like, they're not going to sell out of their positions at a bear market. They're going to understand by the dip, like they're greedy. They want more Bitcoin. So I'm hoping that we see something similar. Obviously, everyone's kind of looking at 2026 for the bear market to, rear its head again. But I would love to see what you said, that, the quote unquote smart money out there is going to kind of dampen the volatility on the downside. And that'd be great. I'd love that.
Yeah, so I don't have the hubris to say I know exactly what's going to happen in the future, because math and science and my model says this is 100% going to happen. Definitely don't have the hubris, but I do have the feeling that we are potentially going to see something different. And that's just because the data has changed, okay? That's just because Michael Saylor literally did just buy 300 days of new Bitcoin supply in 2 weeks. Like, that's the facts. And he is not selling it. Again, some people have questioned Saylor. Oh, he says he's not going to sell it for 100 years, but can we trust him? Well, I mean, he's been buying Bitcoin for nearly 5 years in a row now, and he hasn't sold any, okay? So maybe you have to start believing him. Maybe you have to start believing Bukele and El Salvador, who right now are sitting on $500 million of profit because of their Bitcoin strategy. They've hodled that through a bear market for the best part of 3 years now, okay? So I believe that, yes, we have the potential to see smaller bear markets. And again, I don't think we've actually seen a Bitcoin bear market with the institutions and the big boys involved. So I don't know what it's going to look like. But I do think saying, oh, every time we have an 80% bear market and it has to last for 2 years, because that's what happened in 2014, 2018, and 2022, because it happened then when retail money dominated the space. It has to happen in the future. And I just think that's stupid. I think that's idiotic thinking. I don't think it's math and science based at all, just because the price right now is following what you think is a model. I think the underlying fundamentals are going to break all of our models. So I'm personally prepared for anything though. Like again, my models, my conviction will not shake or waver in Bitcoin if we're at $10,000 tomorrow or $10 million tomorrow. I've thought about both situations, and under either circumstance, it doesn't change much for me about Bitcoin. Like I expect Bitcoin to be worth $100 million a coin, $200 million a coin, $500 million a coin. I don't know, but again, if I wake up tomorrow and Bitcoin's at $10,000, again, in the short term, markets are irrational. Unless something has fundamentally changed with Bitcoin, unless blocks aren't being produced every 10 minutes, or unless something really dramatic has changed, like a $10,000 Bitcoin is not going to worry me tomorrow. So again, I'd encourage everybody to study Bitcoin. And when you do develop this sort of conviction that any price doesn't really waver you, because why would you hold anything else? Like if Bitcoin crashed to 50K tomorrow, what are you going to do? You're going to sell Bitcoin for fiat? Money that somebody controls, debases, and can hold over your head and convert into a CBDC? Are you idiot? Why would you want slave tokens, right? So again, I think that it really is. So I think to answer the question, I think the possibility of shorter bear markets, for me, it's my base case, 50% pullbacks, but I am prepared for everything.
Love it, Luke. Love it. Well, I usually ask our guests to leave our audience with one last message. So I'm going to do the same for you, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I think it'd be hard for someone to listen to this show and not be stupidly bullish, but I want you to leave the audience with one more last bullish message and tell them why they need to buy some Bitcoin.
Oh, I got a couple. So I think I've had some people say, Luke, you being bullish, firstly, you don't believe it. And two, it's dangerous. I've had people who told me it was dangerous to be bullish on Bitcoin and bull posting about it when it was a $16,000 a coin a couple of years ago. Firstly, I am this bullish on Bitcoin. Again, I haven't lived in Australia for 3 years because my base case is Bitcoin's going to monetize really rapidly, and I don't want to be living in an authoritarian, tyrannical government that's a prison colony. It's a prison colony in an island. Okay, when Bitcoin's at $1 million or $10 million a coin, because I don't know how the Australian government will react. We saw how they reacted in 2020, and I don't want to take chances on that. So I genuinely am as bullish as I sound online. I genuinely believe Bitcoin's going to monetize much quicker than most people think. And I kind of back that up with how I live my life. So most people aren't bullish enough on Bitcoin. The other part of the question was, I just think all of this is going to happen much quicker than we think. There are no models for how digital scarcity gets adopted by the world. And I genuinely do believe, we talk about price a lot, but Bitcoin is the most liberating technology in human history, and it is the most impactful technology in human history. And it is going to change our civilization and the world more than any other technology before in human history. That's a big claim. I'm saying Bitcoin is going to be more important than fire. Okay, Alex Svetsky, a good friend of mine, has written an incredible article, Fire, Bitcoin, and Teleportation. And he says those three inventions are going to be, they have been and they will be the most impactful inventions for our civilization. Okay, again, fire was the thing that actually grew our brains, okay? Fire was the thing that for tens and hundreds of thousands of years significantly impacted our evolution, because when we could cook food with fire, we could get more nutrients from our food and our brain grew. It liberated more calories for us. That changed our civilization a lot, dramatically, okay? I'm telling you, I believe Bitcoin could have a bigger impact on our civilization than fire, than the printing press. The printing press completely changed how the world operated 500 years ago. It separated the church from state because it democratized and decentralized information for everyone. Bitcoin's way bigger than the printing press. Bitcoin is going to separate money from state for the first time in 7,000 years. For the first time in 7,000 years, we're going to have a form of money that nobody controls, debases, and cannot confiscate from you. Okay, I really do believe Bitcoin is going to be the most liberating technology in human history. Yes, the price is crazy. Yes, I talk about the price a lot on my live streams. Yes, I talk about the ETFs a lot. But like the real revolution here is that for the first time in human history, we're living through what the sovereign individual authors call is the information age, the first decentralized revolution in human history. And Bitcoin is a core component of that revolution, a core tool. And so are things like these other cool technologies we have, like the internet, which for the first time in human history allows us to communicate and learn from anybody around the world. There are 8 billion people right now. I could listen to or communicate with anyone around the world and send them value instantly. 20 years ago, 100 years ago, you could literally only communicate and learn from somebody in your physical location, like 0.000000001% of the world's population. You had to talk to, communicate with, learn from, marry, date somebody who was in a 30-kilometer radius from you because we didn't have cars. Okay, I think a lot of these models we have from the industrial age are still being thought of in the digital age, in the information age. And people are simply not thinking about everything in life in a bigger picture, framework. So again, I guilty once again of talking for a very long time, but I think Bitcoin is the most important technology that our civilization has ever discovered. It is the thing that could potentially save us from living on this planet forever. Okay, I think the invention of energy money is essential in getting the world to cooperate more and getting us off this planet. Okay, the smartest individuals that have ever walked this planet, Henry Ford, Nikola Tesla, the light bulb creator, what's his name, Edison, all of these guys were fascinated with energy money in the late 1800s and the early 1900s because it's the biggest thing since sliced bread. Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008 created energy money. So I think it really is much bigger than most people think. I think Bitcoin is the most liberating technology. I mean, I could talk about Bitcoin for hours. There's 2 billion people that are unbanked around the world. What happens when you give those 2 billion people a bank account? 20% of the world is locked out of the global economy. 20% of the world cannot create these revolutionary ideas and create a business because they can't get capital because they don't have a bank account. They're locked in the industrial age. How many Albert Einsteins are amongst those 2 billion people who don't have bank accounts? How many incredible ideas do those people have in their brains? A lot of ideas. How many extra ideas, how many extra incredible businesses will be built when people have more time, when they're not thinking about robbing, stealing, or just trying to survive because they're on the rat race because the cost of living is incredibly expensive? How many extra incredible ideas will be created by our civilization when the money is fixed and people can do what they should do? And that is work a little bit, 20, 10 hours a week, maybe less hours a week. Buy the things that they need to survive. And then the rest of the time, they can think about what makes them passionate. They can build a business. They can provide a good and service to the marketplace. I think I could talk about Bitcoin for hours and why it's so important, but I do think it's the most important technology in human history, and nobody has grokked that idea yet. Bitcoin is a binary bet. It's all or nothing, and it is really Bitcoin, or as Nico says, it's Bitcoin or slavery. In the digital age, if Bitcoin fails, we're living under a totalitarian gulag. So it's a pretty big idea.
Well, let's go. I haven't used that soundboard in a minute. So Luke, thank you for coming on, man. A good way to send off everyone on the weekend. Guys, if you liked the bullish signal from Luke, Make sure you follow him on Twitter, Luke Mikic 21. Maybe for the audio listeners, Mikic is Mikic. Of course, go follow his YouTube as well, Luke Mikic. Guy's making incredible content. He's out there putting the bull sauce in your ears. Wait, pause. every single day. Luke, thank you for coming on. We're gonna have to bring you back on again with Nico here, so you can turn that bear into a bull just like yourself. Anyways, Luke, really appreciate you, man. It was a great show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Always love getting on a live stream with the Simply Bitcoin team, and absolutely love the live chat. I was giggling and smiling like an idiot the whole time. There's so many people, so many familiar faces in the live chat. But I absolutely love these live streams. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Chat's goated. Chat's goated. All right, guys. Luke, hang out for a second behind the scenes, and I'm going to wrap up today's show. Guys, we made it through another week. If you're not feeling bullish today, I don't know what is going to make you feel more bullish. But anyways, if you enjoyed the show, of course, like, comment, let us know. Are you feeling this bullish, or are we just smoking the hopium here? And of course, subscribe to Simply Bitcoin. We will be back Monday with our normally scheduled program. And I hope you guys have a good weekend. Make sure you get outside, touch some grass, get the sun on your face, eat some good food. Call your mother or your family and your loved ones. It's very important that you maintain your in-world connections. All right, guys, this is your boy Opti, of course. That was Luke Mikic, and we'll be back on Monday. Peace out, guys. Have a good weekend.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.